The sun sagged low over Dead Man's Gulch, a molten copper coin pressed against the horizon, its fading glow spilling across the thirsty earth. Dust moved in slow circles with the evening breeze, carrying the scent of sweat, leather, and stale whiskey. In the heart of town, men lingered like vultures drawn to a carcass, boots scraping the warped boards of the saloon porch, their laughter sharp enough to split the heavy air. On a weathered table, Clara May Harlow sat hunched, her arms wrapped tight around her ribs as if holding herself together could make her disappear. Her hair, once golden like summer wheat, hung in a tangled braid streaked with grime, strands sticking to the sunburn along her cheeks. Her dress, little more than rags now, clung to her frame, its fabric torn and threadbare, revealing pale, dirt-marked skin. Barefoot, she pressed her toes against the splintered wood, as though bracing herself against the weight of every pair of eyes fixed on her. Her stepfather's voice cut through the murmur like a dull blade. $5. $5 for a strong young girl. Works hard, quiet as a lamb, and won't talk back. Who's talking her? Silas Harlow leaned on the table, his grin twisted and bitter, a thin line of tobacco spit staining the dirt at his feet. His words stirred a ripple of laughter from the crowd. Ain't much left of her, someone muttered, their tone laced with mockery. Another man chuckled darkly. Bet she don't even cry no more. Clara closed her eyes, willing herself to drift anywhere but here. She thought of her mother's hands, callous yet gentle from years at the loom, and how they once smoothed her hair each night. Those hands were gone now, buried beneath a lonely marker on the outskirts of town. Clara had never felt so alone. Silas rapped his knuckles on the wood. Don't let her looks fool you, boys. She's worked like a mule for years, knows how to cook, scrub, and keep quiet. $5. Who's buying? His voice cracked slightly, revealing the sour edge of desperation. Clara knew he wasn't selling her out of concern. This was about whiskey money or another night at the card table. He had never cared for her, not since the day her mother died. Across the street, in the shade of a leaning hitching post, a man stood watching. Jack Callahan. His coat was coated with trail dust, boots worn from miles of riding. He had come to town for coffee beans and a new bridle, not for this. Yet something about the way the girl sat there, silent but unbroken, snagged at him. Jack had seen enough cruelty to hollow a man out. Once, long ago, he'd been a soldier, believing in duty and honor. The war had burned that out of him, leaving only scars and silence. These days he kept to his ranch, a stretch of open prairie where the wind did most of the talking. He didn't need people. He didn't want them. But watching this girl being treated like property made something twist inside him. Silas barked again. $4, then. I won't take less. A man with a sweat-stained hat stepped forward, shaking coins in his hand. Reckon I could use her for chores, or keep me company, if she don't break first. The crowd roared with coarse laughter. Clara felt her stomach churn. She drew in a shallow breath, her nails digging into her arms, bracing for whatever came next. Jack pushed away from the hitching post. His spurs jingled with each step as he crossed the street, the crowd falling silent as the sound of his boots thudded against the dirt. He stopped in front of Silas, his voice calm but steady. How much did you say? Silas squinted, wary. Well now, Mr. Callahan, I didn't expect a man like you to be interested in a girl like her. Jack's gray eyes never left Clara's face. How much? $5, Silas repeated, but his tone was uncertain now. Jack reached into his coat and drew out a leather pouch. Coins clinked as he tossed it onto the table. $50. The crowd gasped. Even Silas froze, his jaw slack, before he snatched the pouch with greedy hands. $50? Well, she's yours, then. No questions asked. Jack turned to Clara. His voice softened. Get up. Clara stared at him, confusion clouding her thoughts. What? I said, get up. There was no anger in his tone, just quiet resolve. Silas laughed, his teeth yellow and crooked. Better do as your new owner says, girl. Jack's jaw tightened, his voice cutting through the laughter. I'm no one's owner. He extended his hand. Come on, let's go. For a heartbeat, Clara didn't move. No one had offered her a hand without cruelty in so long. She'd forgotten what kindness felt like, but his eyes held no hunger, no mocking, only something steady, something safe. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm and warm, and when he helped her down from the table, her knees didn't buckle. The crowd muttered as they walked past. Someone spitting in the dust. "Fool's wasting his money," someone sneered. Jack didn't glance back. He led her to his horse, a sturdy bay mare tethered at the edge of town. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Clara May," she murmured. "Clara," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You're safe now." She wanted to believe him. But years of fear don't vanish with one promise, no matter how steady the voice that makes it. And yet, as Jack helped her into the saddle and swung up behind her, Clara felt something stir deep inside, a faint crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was close. The sun had sunk beyond the hills by the time Jack guided his horse out of Dead Man's Gulch. The town's noise faded behind them, murmured voices, the clang of a saloon piano, the rough laughter of men who had already forgotten the girl they'd mocked only moments ago. Ahead lay miles of open land, washed in the faint silver of a rising moon. Clara sat stiff in the saddle, her small frame tense, as if any wrong move might shatter the strange, fragile reality she'd just stepped into. Jack's arm rested lightly at her back, steadying her against the horse's gait. He said nothing for a long while. Silence suited him. Years of solitude had taught him that words weren't always the answer. Where were we going? Clara's voice was quiet, unsure, as though she feared he might not want to hear it. "My ranch," Jack said simply. "About half a day's ride west. You'll have food, a roof. No one will bother you there." Clara's fingers tightened on the saddle horn. She'd been promised safety before. Empty words spoken by people who never meant them. But this man hadn't made any grand promises. Just facts, plain and steady. And somehow, that was harder not to trust. They rode under a pale sky until the moon climbed high, its light scattering across the plains like dusted silver. Clara's mind wandered, heavy with exhaustion. Her body ached from sitting still for so long, but she didn't complain. She didn't know how to. At last, Jack slowed the mare and dismounted, holding out his hand. "We'll stop here for the night," he said, his voice as even as the quiet breeze. "There's water nearby. You need rest." Clara slid from the saddle, her bare feet touching cool grass instead of the splintered boards she'd known all day. Jack gathered wood and struck a fire while she stood uncertainly, unsure what to do with herself. "You hungry?" he asked, tossing a glance her way. She nodded faintly. From his saddlebag, Jack produced a wrapped bundle, jerky, bread, and a tin cup for coffee. Clara sat across from him, knees drawn close, as he handed her a piece of bread. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it, the smell of food making her throat tighten. "You don't have to eat fast," Jack said, noticing how she bit into the bread as if it might be taken from her. "There's enough." Clara stopped, heat creeping to her cheeks. "Sorry," she murmured. "You don't need to be sorry," Jack replied softly. His tone wasn't sharp, more like someone speaking to a spooked horse. "You've been treated wrong. I see that. But no one's going to take anything from you now." The firelight threw warm shadows across his face, outlining the quiet strength in his jaw, the weariness in his eyes. Clara studied him in secret glances, trying to piece together what kind of man would spend $50 to save a stranger. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking the hush of night. Jack's gaze shifted to flames, and for a long moment he didn't answer. When he did, his voice was low, almost reluctant. "Because I've seen too many people look away when someone needed help. I've done it myself. Tonight, I didn't want to be that man." Clara swallowed hard, her chest tightening with something she couldn't name. She lowered her gaze, staring at her bruised hands in the firelight. When the fire had burned low, Jack laid out his bedroll and gestured for her to use it. "You'll sleep here. I'll keep watch." Her eyes widened. "But where will you sleep?" He gave a small shrug. "Don't worry about me. You need to rest more." Clara hesitated. No man had ever given her space like this, No demands. No threats. She sank onto the bedroll, the worn wool rough but safe beneath her cheek. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. Dawn crept in with a pale blush of gold, spilling over the prairie grass. Clara awoke to the crackle of a fresh fire and the smell of coffee brewing. Jack was crouched nearby, his coat draped loosely around his shoulders, as if he hadn't slept at all. "You'll feel better after some breakfast," he said, handing her a tin cup. Clara sipped the bitter coffee, glancing at him from beneath her lashes. Something about him unsettled her, not in a way that frightened her, but in a way that made her wonder. He wasn't like the men in town. There was no arrogance in his movements, no need to fill the silence with rough talk. He simply was, solid, unshakable. By mid-morning, they rode again, the land stretching out endlessly around them. Clara's mind spun with questions she couldn't yet bring herself to ask. What would happen when they reached his ranch? Would he expect her to work for him? Would he grow tired of her and send her away? As if sensing her thoughts, Jack spoke. "You don't owe me anything, Clara. You're not a debt to be repaid. When you're strong enough, if you want to leave, you can. But until then, you'll have a place." Clara turned her head, stunned by the simplicity of his words. No one had ever given her a choice before. "Why are you kind?" she asked quietly. Jack's mouth twitched with something almost like a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Kind." He gave a short breath. "Maybe I just don't like seeing someone else carry the same weight I've carried for too long." By the time the sun dipped again, the shape of Jack's ranch appeared on the horizon, a weather house standing firm against the wind, with a barn and corral just beyond it. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the sight made Clara's chest tighten unexpectedly. It looked like a place where laughter might once have lived. Jack swung down from his horse and helped her dismount. "Welcome," he said simply. "It's not much, but it's quiet." Clara looked at him, then at the wide, open land around them. For the first time since her mother's passing, she felt the faintest flicker of something that might, someday, be called peace.